Hey, everybody. I hope that you're having a good week. So, I think it's really funny when people explain movies poorly. So, like the movie where the woman with amnesia helps the father find his disabled son. Yeah. Really, really great dramatic movie. Or the one where you've got the paranoid billionaire that's scared of this immigrant, but they end up becoming friends because their moms have the same name. Yeah, it's really heartwarming. Or the one where the immigrant who gets adopted goes back to his place of birth and is reunited with his birth father, and he has to overcome all this culture shock and prejudice. It's a really great movie for this time of year. I think summaries they're really important, and it's especially good when the summary is actually better than those. In the end of the letter of First Corinthians, Paul has a summary for his audience, and it's chapter 15, verse 58. And in this verse, Paul tells the church in Corinth, he says, "Therefore, my beloved brothers and sisters, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain." And so the Corinthian audience, they might not necessarily remember all of Paul's arguments throughout the course of this letter, but if they hold on to that, they have kind of a platform that they can kind of work their way toward the main arguments, that the root of the arguments in the rest of the letter. They can get to the important stuff if they can hold on to that summary. And so, he tells them to be steadfast, to be steady, and to be like set in a fixed direction. And for Christians, that direction is being in line and seeking Christ. We are part of God's kingdom, and Christ has brought us into that kingdom, and we're moving towards him, being like him. And so if we're steadfast in that conviction, in our faith, we're trying to be more like Jesus. And that's gonna fix a lot of the division and a lot of the issues that the church in Corinth had been facing if they're united in Christ and not dividing up over issues like, being of Apollos or Paul or Cephas or whoever. Then he tells them to be immovable. Now, the church in this time, they're starting to face a lot of persecution, a lot of really, really hard stuff. And so Paul tells them, he says, you need to be immovable, So when people try to push you away from the faith or towards idolatry, you don't budge. You stay true to your conviction in who God is, in what Christ has done for us, and in the identity that we have in Jesus. He then tells us to be abounding in the work of the Lord. And I think this is so great because, really the work of the Lord comes down to one thing. And from that one thing, everything else kind of flows out from it. And that's love. Like all of chapter 13, that's just Paul detailing the work of the Lord and how it needs to find its expression in us. And so, surely just as God, loved the world that he gave his son for us, that sacrifice of Jesus, Jesus' life and ministry is all about love, real love. And it's through that love that we are saved. And so that when we engage in the work of the Lord, what we're doing is loving our neighbor. And we're sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's how we take part in saving the world through the gospel of Jesus, which is just really, really incredible. And Paul kind of wraps it up and says that, that our labor is not in vain. And I think sometimes, we can work really, really hard on stuff and we kind of wonder, is this meaningful? Is this fruitful? Or are we just spinning our wheels and wasting our time? And I think a lot of the people in the church, they were worried about this, and certainly at this point in their walk as Christians, they're seeing Christians die, and that's scary. And And Paul's telling them that, hey, look, death is not something that we are afraid of. He says in verse 53 of chapter 15, he says, for this perishable body must put on the imperishable. And this all of chapter 15 is talking about like the relationship between Christians and death. And death is this thing that we typically are afraid of. But Paul, he really does a lot in this chapter to kind of say, hey, look, it's through this, that it's through Christ that like the pain of death, the sting of death is taken away. And really it's through death that we're united with God. And really kind of turns something that is very dark and scary into something beautiful and wonderful. And so, I'm thinking about what does this verse mean for us today? Like, what do we do with it? And I'm thinking that like what we need to go out and do is good. Every day, go out and do good. Find some good thing that you can do for somebody. Do it. And then repeat the process. Find somebody that you can share Jesus with, and then do it. And then repeat the process. Do good every day. And as you do that, this is my prayer for you. That God bless you and that you go with God. Thanks, guys.